Hi, welcome. Thanks for joining us. This is week 6 of the Sustainability, Business, and Entrepreneurship Lecture Series. Um, Happy Valentine's Day if you celebrate. We have Cheryl Whilby here with us from Soulfire Farm today, who's going to do a lecture on creating a more equitable food system. I'll introduce Cheryl in a moment, but really quickly, I just have a few announcements. This is the 5th lecture in the lecture series, so we have 3 lectures left. The 4 lectures before, almost all of them are up on YouTube. So if you're interested in watching any lectures that you missed, you can go to the Evergreen State College on YouTube, and there's a playlist there called the Sustainability, Business, and Entrepreneurship Lecture Series. My name is Paige. I'm the Assistant Director of the Celtic, which is the Center for Entrepreneurial Leadership and Transformational Change. We're a public service center here on the Olympia campus of the Evergreen State College. We host this lecture series. We have some certificates and daytime course offerings, and we're in the process of coordinating internships right now for spring quarter. So if you're a current student at Evergreen and you're interested in an internship in business management and entrepreneurship, just send us an email at celtic@evergreen.edu. Our co-sponsor is Thurston Green Business, which is a free business designation you can get here in Thurston County. It's super easy to apply online. So if you're interested, you can check out their website. They're called Thurston Green Business. This lecture series is funded in full by the Clean Energy Committee, which is a student-led committee with the mission to support clean energy projects and share sustainability strategies at the Evergreen State College. So thank you, CEC. Okay, so Cheryl Whilby is here with us today. Cheryl Whilby, co-executive director of communications and development, first discovered her passion for food systems during her senior year of undergrad. Through her studies, she deepened her knowledge in various food and security issues and became most interested in how these matters disproportionately impact BIPOC communities. Since moving to Albany, New York in 2016, Cheryl has spent her time finding ways to be more involved in her local food system and address food insecurity in the community. From 2016 to 2019, she coordinated the recovery of fresh foods and vegetables from local farms, wholesalers, and other community partners for redistribution to food pantries, soup kitchens, and shelters as Capital Roots Squash Hunger Coordinator in Troy, New York. From 2018 to 2022, she served as market manager of Schenectady Greenmarket, leading initiatives centered on making the market more accessible and welcoming for Black and Brown communities. In 2023, she transitioned into an executive director role with the market to focus on building the market's fundraising strategies to sustain the growing market's food access programming and initiatives. She is also one of the 12 Black food system leaders who developed the Anti-Racist Farmers Market Toolkit in collaboration with the Farmers Market Coalition. So I think I speak for all of us when I say we are so grateful that Cheryl is here with us today, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn it over to you, Cheryl.
Thank you so much. It's really great to be here with y'all today. Thank you for having me. I'm just going to get myself set up here with screen sharing. Okay. All right. So yeah, appreciate the introduction so that I don't have to again say my titles and which organizations I'm working for, but I am going to be talking about both the work that I do with Schenectady Greenmarket and Soulfire Farm, as both of these nonprofits share a mission of food access, food sovereignty being at the core of the work that we're doing. Schenectady Greenmarket is a year-round farmers market, but it is also a nonprofit. Soulfire Farm is a BIPOC-led food justice nonprofit, and both organizations do have some work that they are collaborating on as well, in terms of addressing food insecurity in the capital region, which is the Albany, Troy, Schenectady communities that we work in upstate New York. So I'll talk about that specific collaboration as well. Um, but I want to start out by talking a little bit about the market. So the Schenectady Greenmarket, it was founded in 2008. We are, again, a year-round farmers market that is taking place weekly on Sundays from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. We currently have over 80 vendors that are joining us from around the region, folks who are not just farmers, but people who are doing baked goods, crafts, artisanal, variety items as well. And our market welcomes around 3,500 to 5,000 customers each Sunday at the market. That's more so during our summer season. So we do have two different seasons, our winter market, which runs from December through April and takes place inside this really beautiful theater in downtown Schenectady, Proctor's Theater. And then our outdoor market runs between April and November outside around City Hall in downtown Schenectady. So previously, our winter market actually ran between November and April, and our outdoor was between May and October. But at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, like a lot of farmers markets and organizations in general, we had to find a way to shift to make sure that customers felt comfortable still coming to get their fresh fruits and vegetables and their other items from vendors at the market. So we had to have the market extended outdoors longer in 2020. But then we surveyed vendors to see, do you actually like this extension of having the market outside through the end of November? And that was something that vendors wanted to continue because they do notice the difference in customer traffic once we go indoors. So we have continued with that model for now until vendors want to change again. Um, but at our markets, we are accepting cash, credit, debit, EBT SNAP. We also participate in nutrition incentive programs like Fresh Connect checks, farmers market, nutrition program coupons, and double up food bucks, which I'll talk more about those a little bit later in the presentation. But the core of our work over the last few years has really been how our organization can deepen our understanding and our involvement in addressing food insecurity in our communities, particularly from an anti-racist lens, which I feel has been informed by the guidance and expertise of BIPOC-led organizations like Soulfire Farm, as well as the teachings from the anti-racist toolkit, which I'll talk a little bit more about how that work was developed and how that informs the market's direction as well. But this was a toolkit developed by Black food system leaders and was created in partnership with the Farmers Market Coalition, which is an organization working to support farmers markets with tools and resources to run their markets successfully around the country. So we'll talk more about that later in the presentation. Um, but yeah, and I want to talk about a little bit of what Soulfire Farm's work involves. So Soulfire Farm, we are located in Petersburg, New York, which we want to acknowledge the original stewards of the land, which are the Stockbridge Munsee Mohican Nation, which I'll talk a little bit about our relationship with the Mohican Nation as well later in our presentation. But we are on a little over 80 acres at the farm, and we were founded really out of a need that was expressed by the community that our co-founders were living in at the time, the south end of Albany, which was and still is a community where folks are living under food apartheid. We prefer to use the term food apartheid rather than a food desert, which this term was coined by our brilliant board presidents, Mama Karen Washington, who's one of the founders of the Black Urban Growers Conference, and also farmer at Rise and Root Farm. But using food apartheid really calls in the fact that a food desert is a desert is a natural occurring ecosystem, whereas apartheid is a human created system of segregation that relegates certain people to a lot of choice in what they get to eat, and others with little to no choice, which is often our low income and our BIPOC populations. So the south end of Albany, that is where our co-founders really seeded the vision of this work. Their community members found out that they actually have the knowledge and experience to grow fruits and vegetables and asked them if they would create this farm for the communities so that they can have access to fresh fruits and vegetables. And they were hesitant at first, but eventually said yes and came out to this really rocky, marginal, sloped land that everyone they spoke to told them that they could never grow anything on it. But they were defiant, and it took about 4 years to really build up the soil infrastructure to get it to a place where you could be able to grow on the land and to have all of the buildings for it to be a habitable place for people to be on the land. But the farm eventually did open in 2010. When we first opened, it started out with our sliding scale CSA program. Of course, that is originally the reason why our co-founders started this farm. So we wanted to feed our people. And with that, we have expanded to include so many other programs from that initial seed of feeding the people to training of the next generation of farmers, doing public speaking engagements around the country to educate folks on the injustices experienced by Black and Brown farmers. But with that in mind, I want to highlight that the main reasons for the work that we're doing can be broken down into three main parts. So the main areas of our work um, the main areas that we're working to address and that inform our work are first, justice. So with justice, we're talking about specifically reversing the dangerous decline of farmers of color. Then there's also ecology, where we are working to reverse industrial agriculture's damage to the planet and harm to vulnerable communities through our regenerative farming practices rooted in African indigenous wisdom and technologies. And then lastly, healing. So we are creating spaces for Black, Indigenous, POC communities to be on land and to connect to Earth, to really heal the centuries of land-based oppression for communities of color. Okay, so when we when we talk about the work of Soul Fire Farm and Schenectady Greenmarket in specifically creating a more equitable food system, I think the main theme that is important that we focus on is anti-racism being a major part of the work both organizations are doing. And with that in mind, I want to take the time to highlight why this is important when we think about and talk about changing our food system for the better. So first and foremost, the food system is working exactly as it was designed to work. It was never broken. It was built upon land theft and genocide of indigenous people and exploitation of Black and Brown labor. So we know that there aren't a lot of Black and Brown farmers in the United States, but I want to be really clear that this is not because we don't want to farm, but because we don't have equal access to land, and land was stolen from us. When we think back to the peak of Black land ownership in the early 1900s, Black farmers owned around 14% of the farmland in this country, which was the equivalent of about 16 million acres at the time. Now, this number is down to 1.2%, according to the most recent census in 2022, because we were chased off of our lands by white supremacist groups who were often individuals within government. And for those who were able to hold on to their land, you faced discrimination from the USDA and you weren't given support when you needed it most to maintain your farm. So, with that in mind, I want to call in the fact that my farmers market, Schenectady Greenmarket, and most farmers markets around the country, for that matter, are a reflection of these disparities. With in my market, for example, we have maybe a handful of minority producers in attendance. And if we have less minority farmers, we not only have less diverse market vendors, but customers too. It's really important to call in how representation matters in these spaces. So it's important that the vendors of the market are a reflection of the diverse communities that we serve. Historically, BIPOC populations have been excluded from access to education, capital, and other resources through racist policies that continue to cause systemic disparities in access to resources for BIPOC to this day. So I think it's really important to keep in mind when we talk about increasing food access in our community or creating a more just food system that we really acknowledge the communities who are disproportionately facing the inequities in our system. So now I want to jump into what the work of the market has looked like in terms of our anti-racist work. So our market has been working specifically on our anti-racist work to make changes over maybe the past 4 years or so, to specifically um, use the resources that I mentioned earlier, the anti-racist toolkit, our connections with Black Indigenous POC organizations around the capital region and even outside the capital region. But I would say definitely a lot of the anti-racist work we've been doing was inspired by what I have learned through So Far Farm, and working to transfer that knowledge to lead Schenectady Greenmarket's work in anti-racist sense. So that's one component, but also I would say experience also inform the work that we do at the market. I started working at the market in 2018 as the market manager before transitioning into my current role in 2023. And I can't say that I knew of many Black market managers. It is a job often held specifically by white women in particular. And along those lines, farmers markets generally tend to be more predominantly white spaces. And my market was no exception to that. Um, I didn't see many people who looked like me represented in the market as vendors, as shoppers, volunteers, even our board as well, which was discouraging and something that I wanted to change. Um, I would also say that in terms of experience, growing up, I never went to a farmer's market. Local food was not prioritized in my family, and I think that was a choice of trying to purchase items that are cheaper and what we can afford. And the farmer's market always felt out of our reach and more expensive and just not really a space for us where we saw ourselves reflected. So, on a personal level, for me, it was important to ensure that people who look like me feel our market is a space for them and that they are welcome here. So now I'd like to move into the anti-racist toolkit that I mentioned informed a lot of the market's anti-racist work. Um, and I won't go through all components of the toolkit, but I think it's really important to highlight the way in which the toolkit is broken down to support markets around the country and informing their anti-racist work. So the main components are around the four M's, which we have here: management, mission, messaging, and measurement. So with management, you, if you're in market management, you're prepared to address problem behaviors, design inclusive processes, maintain equity-oriented policies. And with mission, historically and currently underserved people will need to be able to see their communities reflected in the market standards, which may require bringing in new training programs. And then messaging, we're developing culturally relevant messaging about the market and its programs, which is really, really important. And then lastly, measurement. We're making change that requires first establishing a baseline understanding of how the market functions and establishing its current climate and culture. So with that in mind, want to backtrack a little bit to how the toolkit was formed and why it felt needed. So the anti-racist toolkit was developed in response to calls from farmers markets around the country to become more equitable and inclusive. There were definitely many anti-racism resources that existed at the time, including a lot of resources that Soulfire has actually put out. We have a lot of manuals and guides that support this work, but there was specifically a gap in applying this information to the farmers market context. And recognizing this, the Farmers Market Coalition chose to support rather than lead this toolkit's creation, ensuring that those historically excluded from markets shaped its development. So they called in myself and 11 other Black food system leaders to inform the creation of this toolkit. We met, I think it was once every month for about a year and a half, and then formed smaller subcommittees to work on these different 4Ms and what those sections would look like. And the toolkit was ultimately released in 2022 for anyone to access on FMC's website. So with that, I wanted to go into specific examples of how these different M's have informed the market's work and what they have looked like at our market. So with management, um, yeah, management is, of course, a very component of a farmer's market. There's always a market manager. But when we're thinking about management, what does your leadership look like? So this, of course, pertains to the market manager, but it could also be the board. In our case, we also have an executive director, but not all markets operate the same way. For example, not all markets are actually nonprofits. So it applies in different contexts based on your needs. But whomever has some kind of decision-making power, are they fully representative of the communities you serve? Our market is now in a space where I'm really happy to say that we do have BIPOC leadership with myself and our market manager both being Black women, but our board representation has also changed tremendously over the years, from previously being almost 100% white board to now having a board of directors with close to 55% BIPOC representation since 2024. So with management, it's also important to highlight as a farmers market manager, it's important for you to be making space for BIPOC farmers who have been ignored for too long and taking responsibility for learning more about what inequities they face within the food system that also impacts their ability to participate in your market. So, as I mentioned earlier, generations of Black land dispossession results in contemporary farmers markets that don't regularly have Black farmers. But we also know that farmers markets aren't exclusive to farmers. We have a variety of vendors at our market. Folks sell baked goods, prepare foods. So how can you, as a market, support all BIPOC vendors, not just farmers, knowing that BIPOC have historically been excluded from access to resources that make it harder for them to participate in your market? So with our market, that has looked like making changes to our vendor selection criteria. We explicitly name that we prioritize BIPOC vendors for acceptance. We work to provide supports to BIPOC vendors like maybe tents, weights, or other supports in completing the application. I know in the past we've printed the application for folks who weren't able to do it online, having a flexible payment plan for folks who aren't able to pay the full amount upfront, things like that. But also thinking about how are you literally creating space for BIPOC farmers and other BIPOC vendors? So keeping spots open throughout the season, knowing that there might be a vendor that is able to join later or applies later to participate in the market, and having a goal, a percentage of BIPOC vendors that you want to see in the space. We were My market was fortunate enough to receive a farmers market promotion program grant in September of last year to do some of this work as well, of really trying to set metrics around increasing BIPOC vendorship at our market. Unfortunately, like many other organizations, due to the potential funding freeze, we're not sure where those funds are at in this moment, but we're going to keep praying on that. Um, but yeah, also collaborating with other organizations, like as I mentioned, SoFi Farm is a deep collaborator for us, but also organizations like Black Farmer Fund, which is a organization working to secure capital and resources for Black farmers. They were really instrumental in connecting us with one of our newer Black farmers at our market. So yeah, using those connections are really important. And then with mission, some things that I'd like to highlight here are around the different food access programs or nutrition incentive programs that we participate in. So I mentioned Double Up Food Bucks earlier, but this is a program operated by Field and Fort Network that works to make shopping at farmers markets an affordable option for EBT SNAP customers. So customers receive a dollar for dollar match up to $20 per day to purchase additional fresh fruits and vegetables from farmers at our market. We also participate in the Farmers Market Nutrition Program, which is a program that enables WIC participants and commodity supplemental food program seniors to obtain nutritious fresh produce in addition to foods WIC and CSFP provide. And these checks are $5 each and come in a $20 booklet. And base, yeah, all of our farmers at the market participate in this program, which is really helpful because it makes it easier for customers to know who they can shop with. And then we also participate in the Fresh Connect Checks program, which provides EBT SNAP customers with a $2 coupon for every $5 they purchase EBT SNAP. And then lastly, I want to highlight our food box program, which was launched in 2022. But this is a program that we operate, Schenectady Greenmarket, that allows us to purchase produce from our farmers at full price to create low-cost food boxes for our low-income community members. So with this program, we're thinking about the fact that many farmers cannot offer a reduced rate or flexible payment plan for CSA shares to people who simply do not have the means to pay for an entire CSA share upfront. But we know that farmers depend on the upfront income from their CSA participants to grow their crops and buy seeds, soil, and equipment for the entire growing season. So with this program, we're thinking about our customers and also the farmers, ensuring that farmers are paid a fair price for their products while making CSA shares accessible and affordable for our low-income customers. So this program is something that was inspired by Soul Fire Farms Solidarity Share Program, which I'll talk about later on as well. Um, but we do also directly collaborate with Soulfire in this program, and that Soulfire sponsors about 8 to 10 shares for participants of the program each week. And any customer, any person who applies to Soulfire Farms Solidarity Share Program that is from Schenectady County, unfortunately, Soulfire doesn't have the capacity to drive out to Schenectady to make deliveries. It's about an hour away from us in Petersburg. So we refer folks to the food box program and we'll pay for their shares to participate in that program. Okay, so messaging. Yeah, with messaging, it's really important to be careful with the language that is being used, especially on your social media and newsletter platforms. So one thing that we ended up creating at the market, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, was a messaging guide to really make it concrete and be clear about how we want to be communicating with community on our social media platforms. So for example, the messaging guide made sure that we were really approaching the way we were talking about our different programs from an anti-racist lens as well. Um, so when we think about examples of what that might look like, just to give some clarity, maybe we're making a post about vegetables that are more widely used by white families, but not by Black families because it's not a culturally relevant food. An adjustment that you might make to your post or your messaging would be to make it more inclusive by making a post that's centered around collards or okra, which are in season at the time, and thinking about in general vegetables that are culturally relevant for Black communities rather than posting about kale availability, which is not as widely used in Black families. So things like that to really make your messaging more inclusive, but also thinking about um, person first language, which I really have to give a shout out to our friends at Field and Fort Network, who are the folks who operate the Double Up Food Box program, who did a really good job about outlining what this could look like. But yeah, an example of this would be using language that might insult or insinuate a savior complex, as if SNAP users are people that are accepting a handout, for example. So saying something like, Double Up gives those on SNAP the ability to feed their families. Instead, you could say how Double Up Food Box, Double Up Food Box allows people to put healthy food on their table for their families, which really highlights the benefit of what the user gets out of the program versus saying how the program helps someone. So that's really important and appreciate that they help us in drafting that messaging. And then lastly, measurement. Um, so going back to what I shared earlier around wanting to increase BIPOC vendorship at our market, using that as an example, what are some metrics that you could be including to track that progress? So with our FMPP proposal, Farmers Market Promotion Program grant, we intended to add a question to our vendor application to just start the process of more clearly tracking vendor demographics. Um, it was an optional question for people to select with what race or identity, ethnicity that they identify with. So we could have a baseline of what we're working with to inform how we're improving in that regard. Um, and also, surveys are always going to be useful. With our food box program, we collect um, information on folks who are participating in the program, what race and ethnicities that they identify with, but also their feedback on the product offerings. What would you like to see more of? What not like seeing? Or what are some other ways that we could be improving the programming? But yeah, just being conscious of not being too over prescriptive as well. Um, like you could have surveys in tandem with having casual conversations with folks at the market to really get that first person understanding of how they're feeling about the program. Because a lot of the times with surveys, people just kind of want to tell you what they think you want to hear. But if you talk to them in person, they might give you a more candid response. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about Soul Fire Farms programs. So we have quite a few. I won't go through all of them, but um, I talked a bit about the Solidarity Share program and want to highlight what that is. So as I mentioned, we are on 80 acres of land that we steward, but we're really cultivating on about 8 to 10 of those acres, a combination of pasture-raised chicken and eggs, vegetables, herbs, flowers, and we do all of this farming using the methods of our ancestors. So, for example, we use raised beds, which come from the Ovambo people of Namibia, who really knew how to control water by mounding soil. Um, we use a kind of terracing called fanyaju, which literally means throw it upwards and comes from Kenya. We use polycultures that comes out of Haiti, so mixing trees in with herbs and fruits and vegetables, which we call our jardin lacu, which translates as courtyard garden in Haitian Creole. And what's really amazing about these technologies, are the regenerative farming practices that we're using, is that it makes the earth better. Our topsoil is 3 inches deeper now than when we first started at the farm. And there are more pollinators, there's more biodiversity, there's less water contamination and less erosion. So using these farming practices where um, growing food for our community, which we box up every Thursday between June and November. That's when our Solidarity Share programs run. And bringing this to around 25 families, social justice organizations, and through institutional partnerships with like the free food fridges that we have in different communities in the capital region. We're able to serve more than 25 families. Last year, we actually served 767 people through the Solidarity Share program, and actually doubled the dollar value of product that was distributed because we had just such amazing record yields at the farm. So that dollar value was 55,000 last year compared to 25,000 in previous years of fresh produce distributed from our farm to communities. So with the Solidarity Share program, we are doing doorstep delivery of the vegetables. So driving up to folks' houses and bringing them food. Then also the institutional partnerships that I mentioned. But previously, we did operate a sliding scale CSA where folks pay what they could for the produce that we were growing. And this transition into the Solidarity Share program in 2020. So we recognize that we don't necessarily have the capacity to feed all folks in our community who really need this life-giving food. So Solidarity Share Program is one way that we work to feed our community. We talked about our partnership with the market and reaching folks in Schenectady, but we also have a program called Soul Far in the City, where we're supporting folks with growing their own fruits and vegetables. So we build raised beds in the backyards of community members in the 518 Albany, Schenectady, Troy areas, offering the materials, seedlings, soil, and labor that they need to grow for themselves and for their families. And with this program, we work to center BIPOC, folks living under food apartheid, as well as refugees, immigrants, and people with disabilities and chronic illnesses, as well as our elders. The photo of our Solidarity Share program on the right, and then on the left, Danielle, an education manager at a Soul Finder City Build. Okay, so we also are training the next generation of BIPOC farmers. So we have a variety of training programs, but the main one is our Soul Fire Farming Immersion, FIRE standing for Farming in Relationship to Earth, which is a 5-day program designed for aspiring beginning and intermediate growers. And we are welcoming folks from all over the country to come and learn and grow with us. Sometimes folks from outside of the country are coming as well. In the past, we've had people from the UK come to learn with us as well, which is really exciting. But we also have a farm to table immersion that launched 2 years ago, really listening to the feedback from immersion alumni and other folks in our community of other things that they want to see and would love to learn about. Um, so the farm to table immersion is a 5-day program designed for aspiring beginning and intermediate cooks and food justice workers of Black, Indigenous, and Latino heritage to gain skills in culturally rooted whole foods cooking and preservation. And then we also have quite a few online learning opportunities. So we have a program called the Liberation on Land video series, which is available on our YouTube channel. But they are essentially shorter versions of the immersion, I like to say, where you're learning about specific farming techniques from Black, Indigenous, POC agriculturalists, but they're in shorter video sittings. So we've actually sunsetted this program as of last year and have started a new program, which is called the Each One Teach One Reels, which is where we are featuring some of our farmers, talking about different agricultural techniques and shorter reels on our Instagram page, which has been received very well. But you can still access the LOL videos on our YouTube page as well. So also want to talk a little bit about our youth programming. So in addition to the fire farming immersion, we also have a version for youth, which is the LOL Youth Immersion, Liberation on Land, where we're having BIPOC youth from ages 14 to 16 come to the farm for 3 days to really learn how to harvest the power of land as a tool for personal and collective liberation. So youth are having time to be in nature, observing, playing, but also there's opportunity to make music because now we have a program center that was completed towards the end of last year that has a music space in the basement. So it's really beautiful to see all of the different ways that youth are able to engage in the space and be on land. But we also have 1-day youth opportunities as well. Youth organizations, schools, can come to the land for a one-day workshop as well. And we have a variety of activities that we would do with you, including um, opportunity to harvest and then cook with ingredients from the land. Maybe we'll do some food preservation workshops, but it really just depends on the experience that the group is looking for. There's some of our farmers, and on the right, folks from our fire farming immersion last year, processing some onions. And these are our Nubian goats. All right. And then lastly, want to share about some of our movement work. So we are collaborating regionally, nationally, and internationally with frontlines BIPOC-led coalitions like the Heal Food Alliance, National Black Food and Justice Alliance, the Black Farmer Northeast Ecosystem, and the Stockbridge Munsee Mohican Nation on campaigns to support farm workers, remediate land to Indigenous people, and advance reparations for Black farmers and regenerative ecosystems. So I'd love to give a specific example of how we've been working in close partnership with Stockbridge Munsee Mohican Nation. In 2023, specifically, we were honored to support efforts to return 250 acres of land held by the Peace Pagoda, which is located right by Soulfire. There's an amazing Buddhist monk who stewards the place and has been holding this land for the Stockbridge Munsee Mohican Nation. And Soulfire served as a project manager throughout this entire process of returning the land back to the Mohican Nation. So everything from offering legal support, fundraising, negotiation, strategizing, and record keeping support. So we're really excited and grateful that this is coming to fruition. And then we also grow and save Mohican black maize seed for the Mohican Nation through a living seed bank, through True Love Seeds, which we partner with, and proceeds from our sale of other seeds that we're saving through True Love Seeds. All of that is donated to the Mohican Nation. But the Mohican black maize seed that we are saving for the Mohican Nation is not sold. That is what we return back to the nation to use in their communities. And then wanted to share a little bit about some of the policy work that we've been involved with. So most recently, we have a team that is dedicated to showing up in spaces for our policy and advocacy work. So our alumni and partnerships coordinator, CCU, recently submitted a written testimony on behalf of Soulfire Farm to the New York State Legislative Human Services hearing, advocating for SNAP for all. So really working to make sure that the fiscal year 2025, 2026 New York State budget includes investments in strengthening access for food benefits for our most vulnerable communities by supporting a guaranteed SNAP minimum benefit of $100 per month. So that's something more recent that we've been part of, but also, yeah, the reality that we're in right now of a lot of organizations in our ecosystem being impacted by this potential federal funding freeze. A lot of our Black farmer ecosystem partners have come together to collaborate on a letter to be shared with the media to really outline the ways in which we've been impacted, and also showing the ways in which we've been mobilizing in this moment to show up for each other and to show up for community. And also the goal of this letter is to hopefully encourage more foundations and individuals to show up for us in this time as well to be able to continue to operate our programs. And with that, I wanted to lastly just share this resource here that we have um, on our website on Soulfire Farm that is called our Soulfire Farm Food Sovereignty Action Steps Guide. So this was created in collaboration with the Northeast Farmers of Color Alliance, and it is divided into 7 different sections. So based on where you're looking to be more involved with increasing food access in your community or in your state, this is a really good guide to look at different options for that. So it's for anyone who's ever asked, how can I help make the food system more just? This document is a good starting point for that. And yeah, I also left my contact information here for both Soulfire and the market if you'd like to be in touch. Thanks, y'all. Yeah, thank you for that question. Most of our farmers are traditional in that they're mostly growing outdoors, but we do have at least 2 to 3 farmers who are really helpful, especially during the winter market season, because they have um, high tunnels that they're growing greens in that it's still in demand for community. And we've been in situations in the past where customers have stopped coming to the market because they weren't able to get their greens. And there's that component of education as well that this just isn't something we're able to offer right now. But over the past 2 years or so, we've seen more farmers popping up who are able to provide this really essential item that folks want to see in the winter market. So grateful for that. Yeah, thank you for that question. The first, I want to shout out our amazing communications manager, Krista. I think when we first were looking for a communications manager 2 to 3 years ago, we were thinking about where can we find someone who really embodies the Soulfire Farm voice. If you look at our messaging prior to our communications coming on board, there was always this through line of finding the joy and finding a way to uplift communities in the midst of sharing information that could still be very disheartening and hard to receive. Um, so we like to say that our messaging is like always finding the yes and the no. So that extends not just to our messaging on social media, but the way that we engage with community on our main email communications. So we have our main love at soulfirefarm.org inbox, where that's the space where a lot of people are coming to ask us questions or seek guidance. But we have limited capacity to be able to answer everyone's questions, but we still find a way to provide resources. So finding the yes, but also saying, no, actually, we don't have time to have a full conversation about this, but these are other people who might be able to help you out. So I would say that's one component of it. But also, I think we've been generally fortunate to have people on our team who are storytellers. That is what our people have done. Where we come from grades, people who know how to share the pain and the sorrow of the messaging that we're sharing with community, but also be able to remind folks that there's still a light at the end of the tunnel, and what part of the work that we're doing is trying to create that light training up the next generation of Black and Brown farmers. Yes, there's not many of us right now, but we can't stop fighting to take up space, to take up agency. Um, so that also makes me want to just share a little bit about our Beyond Heroes guide. If folks aren't familiar with that, where it's important to name that, yes, Soulfire Farm has this platform of being able to do a lot of storytelling and share with folks because people are familiar with the work that we're doing. But how do we also take that platform and share it with others in our network? So with the Beyond Heroes guide, we're specifically challenging the media to think about there are other people doing this work that you can also reach out to who have amazing stories and expertise to share with you. So, yes, sharing the space with other people, but also when the media comes to talk to our farm specifically, you don't always need to talk to the founder or you don't always need to talk to somebody in leadership. There are other folks on our team who are on the ground doing this work who have stories to tell as well. And we want to make sure that they're being uplifted in this space. Yeah, thank you for that question. I was actually going to look back for a picture of our farm to table director doing some canning this weekend. So she's one of our main farmers, but of course, with farming not happening right now, her focus is very much on our value add production. So she just recently canned and made some elderberry syrup. She did some tart sour cherry juice that she made, which I didn't get to taste, which I'm jealous of. But yes, we do have a lot of value add production that is happening, and this is something that we distribute to community through our online store platform or people who are coming for programming on the land. So a lot of the times that we get the sale of these products is through our work and learn days, which happen between April and November at the farm. And these are opportunities for people to come and learn about our farming practices, but also get their hands on the land and do some farming with us. So they'll be helping us with harvesting the products that will ultimately go into these value add products. But to your point around teas, we do have a lot of herbs in our medicinal garden that we're barbling at these work and learn days as well. And they are able to be stored in our program center, which is really amazing because previously we didn't have that space for a lot of these value add products. So that's allowing us to even expand our capacity to bring a lot more of these products to community. So I will also drop the store link in here as well if anyone is interested in looking at that.
Carol, I want to say, give people an opportunity in the chat or with emojis. Folks, if we can just take a moment to express appreciation for Cheryl joining us today. Cheryl, thank you so much for spending time with us, especially since it's very late where you are. I'm sure you are very tired. Thank you for your stories, for your expertise, for your wisdom, for your work, and for your inspiration. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks so much, y'all. I appreciated being here and sharing space with you all.